this morning we are joined by Professor Oyebanji Oyeyinka, who is a scholar, researcher, and professor in economics, innovation, and technology management. He also served as a senior special advisor on industrialization to the president of the African Development Bank. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Prof.
Well,
glad to see you again.
Glad to see you too. The last time we were on a hard copy together. We've also been on Sunrise quite a few times, but it's good to see you in person on in our Sunrise Daily Studios.
Same here.
Well, here we are. The World Bank has issued this particular report. A lot of people, there have been quite a number of reactions to it. I'm sure you've seen the reaction of the federal government, which seems to be giving some subtle pushback to the figures that the World Bank issued. 139 million people still in poverty. They're not happy about that. They're questioning this. Is it $2.50 a day benchmark for marking those who are left behind, so to speak, who are still you know, within the poverty line, so to speak? Well, but this is where we are now. Looking at the broad economic reforms which the federal government has done, what more would you be adding? Is there anything extra that you'll be adding to it to maybe give it a little more body and perhaps help it trickle down faster to the generality of Nigerians? No,
thank you very much, Mopi. I think the federal government has done well with the issue of stabilization. The subsidy removal, it was inevitable. The exchange rate, you know, convergence was inevitable. But what those actions they do is always like stability or stabilize, liberalize, privatize. That's the sort of World Bank playbook. But, and, you know, I sort of agree in a way with them for once on the need to move beyond stability. You have to go beyond macro stability. Macro stability is useful because it helps you to sort of reduce volatility in unemployment, debt, and all those fiscal variables. But beyond that, where the economy is actually takes off in sustainable growth is the next level. You know, there are 3 levels of the economy: macro, meso, micro. The meso level is the sectors: agriculture, industry, services. So that is where you must expect growth, and that is, I believe, where we need to now put a lot of emphasis. You know, the whole notion of structural change, going from subsistence agriculture to modern agriculture, to having low-tech industries, textile, garment, woodworks, furniture, all of those things that create jobs for people. Those are areas where I believe the government should now put a lot of emphasis, you know, because manufacturing, as I've said many times, manufacturing has been proved for many years, decades, everywhere, is the engine of growth. You know, once you stabilize the economy, and stability also is subject to discussion. Depends on where you want to stabilize, where is the equilibrium. But my take is that we need to now put a lot of emphasis on those areas. How do we improve agriculture? How do we improve productivity? How do we... I was in Oyebanji 2 days ago to give a lecture on, and I put a lot of emphasis on cashew. Let me give you this example. The total export of agricultural products from Nigeria in 2024, I think, was 3 billion. The export from Vietnam on cashew alone, because it's processed, is 4 billion. Mind you, everything we exported in agriculture was 3 billion. One product from Vietnam was $4 billion. Total agricultural export from Vietnam was 62.5 billion last year.
Yeah, export.
Exports.
Just agriculture.
Just agriculture alone, you know. So agriculture has that potential. Once you have modernized it, once you have begun to apply high productivity techniques and all of that. And I'm mentioning it because I was really concerned with the cashew issue in my hometown, you know. The trees are old, almost 90% are just wild trees. Nobody does that anymore, you know. The yield is very low. Much of the trade is by middlemen. the poor people who farm get very little value. So I think this is where our government should now put a lot of emphasis. The productive infrastructure. There are no roads for the most part in many of these places. There are no access. You want to talk about minerals. Many of where lithium has become a big issue now for Nigeria. And if we don't take care, it's going to go the way of crude oil. Some folks come, they just take away the lithium and ship it out. So my recommendation, like you said, what will I do? What will I recommend? Is that meso level. Beyond that, also the micro is where the companies are, the farm level. You know, every country that had, you have seen in history that had made progress, they pay very specific attention to the micro, the companies, you know, the kinds of debate we had, the Dangote and all of that. Should not be a debate. When you have a conglomerate that is creating jobs, you back them up. Others, you back them up. And also the small, medium enterprises. We need those packages that ensure that they operate efficiently, safely, and that they are spread everywhere. You know, the major thing about manufacturing is that it can be anywhere in the country, whether it's Savannah area, whether it's wherever it is. Unlike, say, crude oil, which is an enclave economy, just located in one place. And that is where we have specialized for so long. I think that is will be my recommendation. Like I said, at the hierarchy of the economies, the macro, meso, micro, we should look closely. Yes, and we have to commend the government for stabilizing.
Yeah, at the macro level.
At the macro level.
But you now say it's time to trickle down to the meso and the micro.
That's
and you have said we should look at agriculture and manufacturing. And agriculture, you know, I was saying that, we're switching gears now to the World Bank report, especially from the issue of security. But it turns out we're not really switching gears, are we?
Yeah.
Because the issues are very strongly connected. If farmers cannot go to their farms as a result of a security situation, then, you know, it is connected. It means that they will not be able to do much.
Yeah.
If people are scared to invest in the agricultural sector because of the security challenges, it's going to be a problem. All of this, at the end of the day, will contribute towards what it is that we're looking at.
Yeah.
You have done a great job. You've done a lot of work, especially with the special agro-processing zones at the beg your pardon, I'm looking for the name of the bank.
African Development Bank.
Yes, AFDB, yes. African is coming to my mouth, but I know it is the AFDB.
Yeah.
So that was supposed to be something that was supposed to be like a Kickstarter as to what exactly could happen, the possibility that are present in our agricultural sector.
Yeah.
Would you say that, given what you know, that there has been concerted effort to actually stem, or will you say we understand the security challenges we face, or our rural people face in the agricultural sector?
So I was listening to the professor. It's very complex, the security issue. But let me first of all say, you know, and you've always engaged me on SAPZ. I'm very happy to tell you that now we are actually disbursing to almost all the states. You know, we have eight of them that were established. It's a complex project again, and, you know, in the next 1 year, people will begin to see the results. And it also affects the farming side. But it's also a double-edged sword if we don't have this kind of issues, because without farming inputs from the farms, the factories will not be able to also stabilize. We're going to have 10 more states, 10 more SAPZs next month. And I must commend this government because they've really backed SAPZ. It's the right thing to do. My hope is that in the next 2 years, we'll have an SAPZ everywhere in the country. And this is why the security issue matters a lot. Like you said, they are all interconnected. Without security, without peace, farmers cannot go to their farms. I drove across a lot of areas, and I was reflecting on the kind of ecosystem that you find in the so-called rural areas. It's very real, you know. It's very real. I actually purposely drove across in Oshun, to...
Was your heart in your mouth when you were doing so?
Eh?
Was your heart in your mouth? Because any journey by road these days, a lot of people say
thank God
they're usually quite anxious.
Thank God somebody gave me some security, even that. You know. But the point is, you know, the challenge of that ecosystem is isolation. What do I mean by isolation? You see one village here with maybe 10 scattered houses. You travel another 20 kilometers to see another one. They are not connected for the most part by internet. They don't have phones, most of them. And this vast land, unutilized. Nigeria has 84 million hectares of land. Vast land. And I sat there and I was reflecting, if only we can make use of this space, equip these people. As far back as 1970, 79, Chief Awolowo was talking about Opticom community. I don't know whether you remember. And the whole idea is very similar to SAPZ. The two components of SAPZ are Greek transformation centers. That is a situation where you now configure a space and ensure that every space has very basic things: water, schools, healthcare, mechanization centers. This is where we should be going.
Yeah, I remember that I don't know where my father served, but he was telling me about I don't know about the Opticom Center now, but he was telling me that under Obasanjo's Operation Feed the Nation, they had something like that, where youth corps members were sent to those kinds of farms with mechanization, with food, with water, with some electricity in rural communities. And the idea was just to feed the country.
We will change this country if we're able to do that. I'm telling you. You know, you're talking about the baseline for poverty. And some time ago, I was sitting by myself and doing some calculations. You know, so we have all people below $2. Suppose magically we're able to raise them to $8. Just imagine the difference per day. Multiply that by 360 per day. Multiply by the population of that place. You are going to crowd in millions of dollars.
But I wonder today, who will be willing? I mean, assuming we're able to say, oh, you know, we actually do have the youth population, and we just need to teach them mechanization. After all, at the end of the day, isn't it jobs that they're all looking for? Isn't it to be able to, you know, make something productive of their lives? And if we were to even show them, but who will want to go to the farm today, especially with the insecurity that our country is witnessing in the rural areas?
This is why, for me, the most existential challenge for government is to take care of that problem. I believe that Nigeria can solve that problem. And the job market is the easiest way to eradicate poverty. The labor market is easy. You give someone a job, it can affect like 3-4 people in his family. One person working and earning just a basic 100,000 naira or something, the life of everyone around him is changed. So I feel that the only way that we can solve the poverty problem is through production of all kinds, you know, but on the farming level, producing by farmers, producing by artisans, whatever it is. That's the only way you can create jobs. So, and I believe that we should actually take a cue from the SAPZ, and I'm referring to Opticom community. That's what Chief called it. Professor Mabogunje of was one of those who were actually in charge of that program. It's called Optimum Community, so they call it Opticom. And Chief now termed it Opticom Strategy. Basically, you have to organize those areas. It takes a lot of effort. You have to organize it. It's very deliberate. That's what China did, by the way. You know, a lot of people say China took 800 million people out of poverty. You ask yourself, was it in Hong Kong? Was it in Shenzhen? Was it in Beijing? No, it's in those spaces. They deliberately went there. They were not doing palliatives. What they did was to go there, organize these people, teach them basic TVET type of thing, technical and vocational education. And within 20 years, and I believe strongly that, look, we don't have to wait another 200 years like, you know, from Industrial Revolution. In 20 years, this country can change.
Which, you know, dovetails into my next question around poverty, as you have also studied that issue very closely, especially in, in developing countries. What would you say has been the biggest drawback? Why has it been so difficult for us to lift our people out of poverty?
I think it's leadership, if I may say so. I think it's someone being very intentional, being very deliberate, and saying, and you cannot just blame the federal alone, by the way. We have to also hold our, governments at the state and local government level to account. That is the...
They haven't pulled their weight?
I don't want to make a judgment on everybody, I know there are some governors that have done their best, but I also believe that there is far more to be done given the gap that we are still seeing. I don't want to go into the numbers, the argument with the World Bank. And, for us, for Nigeria, that should not be the relevant thing. It's about our own people. How do we get out of this? I don't think it's rocket science, by the way. I just mentioned to you Vietnam. It was a dark hole of poverty. They were, cap in hand to Russia, to Soviet Union in those days, too. It turned around.
Today, there are markets in tourism.
I know 62.5 billion on agri alone. In terms of total export, they are now into electronics, into semiconductors, into drones, all kinds of things. That country just a small country, It's just like just taking only the Southwest. And so I think if, scientifically, if something can happen somewhere, it can happen elsewhere. In science, you say the gravity applies here, it applies in Belgium. We can do it, if we take the right people in the right place, put the right people in the right positions,
yeah, but also
who have passion.
Given what you also know, do you think that there are external forces against Nigeria's progress?
Of course, there will always be. Of course, I believe that there are forces that don't want Africa, even as a whole, to go anywhere. They see us as the source of their inputs to their factories. So they don't want things to happen. So that is there. But I always make the point, MOP, that it depends on you at the end of the day. And I remember that, I served in Ajakuta, and a lot of people, they come out and they say, oh, it was conspiracy that spoiled Ajakuta and all of that. I say, yeah, but yeah. This same World Bank, they said the same thing to South Korea. Don't build a steel plant. Don't do it. You can't do it. You don't have comparative advantage. You don't have the market. There was a general called Park Chung-hee. He was the ruler of South Korea in that moment. He just listened to them and went to somewhere else. He went to Japan and built Pohang Steel Plant. We were 3 years apart with Ajakuta, that Pohang Steel Plant. Today, that plant produces 45 million tons of steel, primary steel, and 37 million tons of finished product steel. Today, we produce 0. We were 3 years apart. And one day, I want to sit down and write that story, the history of the political economy of these kinds of things, So, what am I saying? It's about leadership. This guy was telling his people, and that time, Korea also was a hellhole of poverty, right, by the way. In the 50s, 60s, people couldn't eat 2 square meals a day. And people were saying, oh, we just want food. He said, yeah, I know you want food. But that's not where I'm going. I have North Korea breathing down my neck. They're going to invade us. If I don't have steel, if I don't have chemicals, I cannot build weapons. So their own development was driven by the fear of someone coming and the fear that they will be isolated one day. A leader must be motivated by something. We should be motivated by the hatred of poverty. It's very painful that we're importing food. We become a consumption nation. And you see a lot of our elites always boasting about their Prado, iPhone, and each time I hear people saying it, I just look. You remember 40 years ago, whatever? We used to laugh at made in Japan, made in China, made in this. Oh yeah, I only buy America. And and those fellows, you make jest of them, they take your jest, they use it to innovate. They say, okay, so people are laughing at us. This product is not like this, we change it. Next year they come with a new brand, you buy. They collect money, you get poorer, you buy, and then they learn the most insidious thing about a consumption economy is that you have outsourced all your jobs out, and you have outsourced all the learning to produce, the learning to maintain, the learning to recreate, the learning to innovate. That is what has happened to us. Nigerians are smart people. If we had continued on that path of learning today, in 1990...
Oh dear, Prof. I'm afraid I would not have time for another story.
Yeah.
But I do know that our viewers have been largely inspired by listening to you this morning. And we certainly have to bring you from time to time to teach us and remind us of what is possible in our country. We have to thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. We've been speaking with Professor Oyebanji Oyeyinka, who is a scholar, researcher, and professor in economics, innovation, and technology management. Thank you so much for coming on the program once more.
Thank you very much.